Hello everyone. Welcome to the sixth episode of Learning Java. Today we'll be learning about the if construct. So if construct is basically an if and else statement. So if something happens, then the program is going to execute something. So let me give you an example. I have this class created called if construct, and I have put the import java.util.star to access the package, the scanner class package. So, and now I'll be starting with my void main. So to initialize the scanner, I'll write scanner sc is equal to new scanner system.in. This way I'll be able to accept the values from the user using the variable sc. Now I'll accept a value from the user. So first I'll tell the user to enter a number. So system.out.println enter number, and I'm putting this in double quotes. So I'm gonna accept the number in a variable n. So int n is equal to sc dot next int. Now the number which the user enters is going to be stored in the variable n. Now what we have to do is, let's say if n is an even number, then we have to print it's an even number, and if it's not an even number, then we'll print it's not an even number. So if, now that's how you write an if. So you write if and then bracket open and close, and then these are, and inside these curly brackets is where your program code is going to be in that particular if, and in these parentheses you're going to put the condition. So we have to check if the number is even or odd. So that'll be a bit complicated for now because that'll involve the mod operator. So let's just do let's say if the number is 1, it's greater than 1 or it's less than 1. So if n is greater than 1, so we're going to check if the number is greater than 1, and that's how we do it. We use the relational greater than operator. So if n is greater than 1, then what's going to happen, it'll be in these statements. So if n is greater than 1, we'll print system.out.println n is greater than 1. So we'll print that. Now what if the number is less than 1? Then we can write an else if statement. So let's say we need to have more than one if statements. If n is greater than 1, if n is less than 1, if n is equal to 2, if n is equal to 3, and if you want all of that. So if comes only in the first line. If we want one more if statement, we can do else if n is less than 1. So if n is less than 1, then I'll just copy paste this here, and we'll print n is less than 1. So if you want more than one if statement, you have to use else if after if. Now let's say if you want more else if statement, let's say else if n is equal to 1, then you can print something like n equals 1. So you can have multiple else if statements. Now let's say you wanted to have an else statement. So let's say I'll remove this example for now. So let's say you want to have an else statement. So else, what else basically does is that the else statement will be executed when no match is found. So in this case, if n is greater than 1, it's gonna print system.println n is greater than 1. Else if n is less than 1, system.out.println n is less than 1. Then else mean else. So if it's neither greater than 1 nor less than 1, which means that it's equal to 1, else we'll print system.out.println n is 1. So if no match is found in the if and else if constructs, then the compiler will execute the else statement. An important point to note here is that there can only be one else statement. There can be multiple else if statements, but it's not compulsory to have else if statements. You can have only if statement or if statement and else statement. Also another thing, you can have only an if statement also. So let's say you want to have an else and else if. So if we only have the code something like this, if n is greater than 1, it's going to print this. So even this is fine. And it's not compulsory to have else if, and it's not compulsory to have else. But if you want else if, it's compulsory to have if, and if you want else, it's compulsory to have if. So in short, if should be in every if construct. And there can only be one else statement, and it doesn't matter where the else comes. It can be before the else if, but a good ideal programmer will put it at the end. So this is the code. Let's see what the output is. So we're going to compile this, and then we're going to click on void main. So let's enter our number. Let's say we enter 12, and it's going to print n is greater than 1, which it is. Let's try that again. Let's say if we enter 1, and it's going to say n is 1. So that's nice. So the code works. So now we'll be doing the program to check if a number is even or odd. So what is an odd number? An odd number is a number which when divided by 2 gives the remainder 1. And an even number is a number which when divided by 2 gives the remainder 0. So if n divide by 2 equals 0, then we can write system.out.println n is even. Now you might think this is right. Okay, when you divide n by 2, if you get the remainder 0, then obviously it's even. But no, when you divide n by 2, Java takes the quotient. So let's say if the number is 10, so 10 divided by 2 will be 5. And even though it's an even number, it's not equal to 0, because 5 is not equal to 0, it will not print this. So we need to check if the remainder is 0. And what do we use to check the remainder? That's right, it's the mod operator. So the mod operator, which looks like a percent sign. So if we do n mod 2, so let's say 10 mod 2, so 10 will be divided by 2, we get the quotient as 5, but the remainder as 0. So the value will be 0. So if 0 equals 0, then it's going to be an even number. And else, if n mod 2 is not equal to 0, if it's either 1 or 3 or something, then it's going to be an odd number. So system.out.println n is odd. So this is the program. So if you want the remainder, you have to use the mod operator. And note that I'm using the double is equal to. So whenever you compare, you're supposed to use the double is equal to. So if I click on void main and I enter the number 10, it's going to show n is even, which it is. So now I'll show you a few more examples of relational operators. So let's say you want to do the other way around. I'll give you an example of the not operator, the logical not, which is an exclamation mark. So you can even do the code in this way. If n mod 2 not equals 0, then it's gonna be an odd number, else it's gonna be an even number. This is another way of writing the code, and there are multiple ways of writing the code. I'm just giving you an example of the logical not operator and how it can be used. So if we enter 10 again, n is even. So now I'll give you an example. If let's say you want to have two relational expressions, let's say you want to check two or more things in one if construct. How do you do that? So you need to link two relational operations, which can be done by using logical operators like and or. So let's say if we need to check if n is greater than 1 or n is less than 1, then we can write if n is greater than 1 or n is less than 1, then it's going to print n is less than or greater than 1. So that's how you use the or operator. In the same way, you can use the and operator, although for this example it doesn't make any sense, but it's just an example. So if either one of these conditions is true, then it's going to print this. Another thing which I wanted to point out is that I put brackets after if, which is compulsory, but it's not compulsory if you have only one line in your if construct. So let's say in this case, I have only one line in my if construct. I need not put these parentheses, and which Java will consider this as part of the if. It will not consider this. If you want this line also to be part of your if statement, then you have to use these curly brackets. And even the same applies for else if you have only some condition. After you put some condition, if you have only one line, you need the brackets. Also, let's say you don't have brackets and your code looks something like this. Java will not consider this blank line as empty. It will not consider this line. Java only considers lines which have something written in them. So it will just skip this line. So this line means nothing for Java, and it's going to only consider this line. So if we see the output of this code, so let's say I'll execute the code. So I enter the number 0.9. Let's say I enter the number 1. So it's gonna print, I enter the number 1 and it's only printed 1. So that's because this condition was not true. Both of these conditions were false, so this wasn't printed, but this was outside the if loop, so this was printed. So that's it for today, everyone. Thanks for watching, and if you have any queries, doubts or suggestions, you can mail me. My email will be in the description down below, and thanks again for watching.